So, first of all, I've tried to compress 50 plus year in 50 minus slides, so I will be skipping some. The URL there is a handout PDF, so you can have all the materials, including the ones I skipped. And essentially, first of all, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm telling you, and then I tell you what I told you. I find out that it's good to repeat things. But to just summarize, the overall theme is change happens. That's the main lesson, though it took me a lifetime to learn that. The minor theme is me, what happened to me, and so on. There's a little technology, but I've downplayed it because technology changes even too fast. Whatever I learned 10 years ago, technologically speaking, is probably no use to you today. On the other hand, talking about humans, those don't change so fast. We're at a release 1.0 beta, and I haven't seen any upgrades around. And the main connection between the two is how to manage knowledge workers. That is, workers like all of us, I think. It's a pity it took me so long to learn that this crucial lesson, that is, everything is change, change is crucial. This is a superb book on corporate strategy rather than lower level management, written by Shona Brown, who was vice president at Google, and before that I think she was at McKinsey, and you can read her quotes. The key strategic challenge in any business is managing change. And that is not so trivial as it appears. First of all, given a certain area, you may identify potential improvements, that is changes, and how do you apply them? From a system viewpoint, you have to do a big bang thing because changing one thing changes everything else. But in practice, if you do that, you never know what is helping and what is hurting you. So incremental change is really to be recommended despite its strategic issues. Incremental and iterative. You have an idea that needs you to change three things, try to think, can I do one change at a time? Remember, given that change will haunt you forever, you can just react to it, you can anticipate it, predict it, and try to be ahead, or you can create it. You can be the change you want to see. The best way to predict the future is to create it. As all great quotes, this is hard to attribute. Maybe it was Lincoln, maybe it was Alan Kay, some say Peter Drucker. I'll leave you to read all that they all have written and decide who deserves the credit. Note that I haven't even started listing all the bad ways you can use to deal with change. The main one is resist it, undermine it, deny it, and so on. Each of those is a guaranteed failure. Not today, but tomorrow it will break everything you're working for. Another way to put it is Alan Watts, that I don't have a quote here, but the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, join the dance. And as Alan Watts reminds ourselves, as a great author, I am always sincere but never serious. So, the minor issue, me. The timeline, this summarizes the last 70 years. I was born here, I graduated here, I spent a little time with Texas Instruments, then joined IBM Research. All of this started in hardware and then slid into software and management almost inevitably. I had the good luck to stumble into Python, and the publishing of my bestseller books on the subject had a lot of people asking me for consultancy and so on, so I ended up leaving my job as an employee and being a consultant. Then in 2004, I was informed that the biggest buyer of my books was this tiny unknown firm in California known as Google, and I offered my services. That the main value of writing a book is to make yourself known so you can sell your services. And in the end, they told me, we don't really like getting external consultants for technologies which are crucial to the firm, but we have a good job offer for you. And so I moved eventually from Bologna to California, and there I stayed, and there I retired. Back to my timeline. What did I learn early on? Summary. How I started learning English, how I chose whether to get a degree in medicine or engineering, the problems with trying to join a company that's very fast to hire, trying to do hardware and then finding out that software ate the world, and my resistance to Python. What do you mean another programming language? I know 2 dozens. Why do I need another one? And then I found out. So first of all, this is, I've often been asked in the past, what's the most useful language for a programmer? And people expect me to say and explain Python or C or Julia or, there are so many. My answer is English. If English is not your native language, learn it. It's going to do more for your career than any potentially programming language, no matter how good, as proved by the fact that despite being a Bolognese speaking in Bologna, I've been asked to make this whole presentation in English. If you do read Italian, this is a URL to an early work of mine that was never published outside the web. It's actually a tutorial on programming to the API of Win32 in the C language, but I think that even if you care zero for the subject, it's got several interesting programming lessons that do extend as to how to develop and deploy. Okay, so in 1964, I needed to choose a college major. As those of you who aren't Italian may not know that in Italy, at least at the time, but I think it's still true, you have to pick your major from day one. And I got to Via Zanolini, where the temporary office of the University for Connections was sited, and still didn't know whether I was going to do medicine or engineering. In the place, I met an old friend, son of another old friend of the family. Both my dad and his dad were doctors. And so I said, oh, so we won't be bored in the queue, because the queue for medicine was miles long. I spotted around, the queue for engineering was 3 people. It may seem a little short-sighted, like, you're going to save 20 minutes now and then change the rest of your life. Well, I did later on find a deep reason. Well, if there's so many doctors and so few engineers, I'll have better career opportunities as an engineer, be more in demand. There's short supply. The summary of the lesson learned here is, again, something I had to learn, but I think it's best attributed to a baseball player, Lefty Gomez, in 1930. I'd rather be lucky than good. Mind you, this theme is one which has been covered with similar quotes from Seneca to Thomas Jefferson to Hemingway. My favorite is Hemingway, particularly because the quote is from his absolute masterpiece, The Old Man and the Sea. It is better to be lucky, but I would rather be exact. So when luck comes, I'm ready. That's one way to put it. Jefferson's also was pretty good. I am firm believer in luck, and I found out that the harder I work, the luckier I am. In this particular case, I didn't actually work hard at all, so that's even better, but keep it in mind. Now, finally graduated, I'm looking for a job. Specifically, I'm looking for a job designing integrated circuits. That was my dream. And after preliminary rounds, two firms really stood out. Texas Instruments at the time was one of the major IC makers. They're still doing very well in its field. And IBM. Few people think of thought of IBM as a maker of chips, but IBM research was at the burning edge of chip making. There had been a Nobel Prize awarded for spelling out the IBM, writing with single atoms, positioned by a clever hack on an electron microscope. That was very, very fun. So IBM was taking months and repeated unending rounds of interview to try and select me. Then I went to interview with Texas Instruments, and they took 2 days. I was scheduled for 1 day. They asked me to stay another, help change my tickets back. And at the end of the 2 days, I had a written offer. And I was very impressed. If one company is taking 9 months of selections to decide whether they want me and the other one decides in today, which is the better one? Well, that's a lesson I learned, not necessarily the fast one. Not getting into details here, but I remember my first all-hands meeting where the VP of engineering proudly, VP of personnel, human resources, proudly proclaim, and so this year we've cut turnaround and engineers to 30%. Like one typically lasts here 3 years. What a career is that? Apparently that was considered a big achievement. IBM at the time aimed for lifetime employment. That's why they were so careful, so slow. And so after trying out at Texas Instrument, when they kept starting projects and canceling them, and all my projects were canceled. And after a few months, I was getting a little frustrated and having beers with colleagues. And one who had been there 5 years says, "Don't worry, I've been here 5 years. Not one of my designs has actually seen silicon, and yet I've been promoted. I've got raises." And they were trying to reassure me, say, "Oh, okay, so that's a good career here, designing 100 circuits and never seeing one actually physically done. Not really what I want to do with my life." So I restarted the IBM chat and ended up joining IBM. Make haste slowly, festina lente, is the lesson from that. Sometimes you think you can cut corners and be fast, maybe, but beware of the consequences. Now, what I wanted to do was hardware. That's what was really my passion. And pretty soon realized that hardware of any complication is really no use unless there's some software in it. If it's a very simple piece of hardware, my favorite example is a hammer, you don't really need any software. You just bang on whatever, hopefully the appropriate spot. But just about anything else, you'd better have some software in it. At the time, Mark Andreessen wrote the well-known quote, "Software is eating the world." That was back then. Nowadays, I would say ate the world and is probably digesting it. So, do you really need a different focus? Well, technically, yes, of course, but from a people point of view, which is what I'm going to drive this presentation towards, is not that different. Then, again, my anecdotes. I was working at a local firm in Casalecchio, Bologna, called CAD Lab, later renamed to Think3 and later still went broke. But I was doing lots of Fortran, maintaining all the computer-aided design, low-level, system level, and since it was system level, I introduced the C language with elaborate macro systems so that a piece of C with macros could interface to the different kind of approaches various compilers and machines offered. And trying to move to C++, not really strongly object-oriented. People weren't really ready for that in the firm, but still much handier than C in many ways. And a friend and colleague said, oh, you know, you should really learn this new language, Python. I said, why do I need another language? Come on. Any of the 20 I had must be pretty good. So I resisted, but eventually, trusting the judgment of this colleague, got into it and changed my life forever. First of all, I had this personally written free time program about the game of contract bridge, my passion, computing, simulating play to evaluate various aspects, and it was very useful. Good bridge players, champions, kept asking me to simulate this, simulate that, but every time I changed a comma here, everything broke over there because it was a hodgepodge of Perl, Visual Basic, machine language, Modula 3, just an interesting thing. So I needed to rewrite it from scratch and decided to use Python. Actually, what decided me was one weekend. Family was away. I had the free weekend, so started late on Friday to say, let's see if I can use this new language to program in a technology that was totally new to me, web application. The web was very young then. And I probably won't finish it in a weekend, but, well, I was finished by Saturday. Every time I had to guess what will this do, I tried guessing, it always worked. Python was the perfect map for the way my brain worked. So, to try and give back something, I joined the Usenet group. That was before the web was widespread, so discussions happened in these structured mailing lists known as Usenet groups, and apparently did pretty well in answering technical questions, so that the already famous Pythonista Steve Holden, sitting right there, hi Steve, nicknamed me the Martelli bot. The bots were a long tradition, well, relatively long. Python was a pretty young language in the 90s, but the Tim Peters, the greatest of all contributors to Python ever, was known as the Timbot. And then there was late Frederick Lund, the F-bot, and so I was the third bot. And so, given the fame acquired through posting... What? Oh, wow. Okay. I got the opportunity to write books. I actually offered to write the nutshell book about Python to O'Reilly, the publisher. They didn't have one. And they said, yeah, Bell, we actually smack in the middle of working on a Python cookbook and we've lost an author. Could you do that instead? And working with David Asher, I did. And it was a very, very interesting job, very different from anything else I've done in my life, writing a technical book for a large audience. And then I got to write the nutshell, and that made a bazillion opportunities for me. That's the real return of writing a book. It pays less than minimum wage if you count the number of hours you spend on it and the amount of euros or dollars, or at the time liras, that you get in return. On the other hand, it makes your name well known, especially if you're going for consulting, being able to say, hey, I am the author of this bestseller, gives you, like, you can sell your services in 2 days instead of 2 weeks of communication. And so the years passed, as I was originally a freelance, and then I got this got into Google. And incidentally, through Python, I also met my future wife, Anna Ravenscroft, and that's why our license plate in California, you get to get a personalized license plate if with a little extra license cost yearly. We chose P Heart THON, the heart looking a little like a Y, as well as standing for love. When then I joined Google, and I was offered the opportunity to join the brand new European labs they were starting to open, but I had done the joining the remote lab or getting helping start a remote lab back in IBM, and I knew that it works much better if you're at the mothership rather than the detached parts. And so, moving to California, it was. At which point, I really had, I had in my previous career, to choose a role. Would I be an individual contributor or a manager or something in between? A typical term is a tech lead, which is not quite a manager, but kind of, sort of, if you squint just right. Because the problem is, manager is a very broad word. What's a manager? And pre-alert, most of the rest is about managing, because those are lessons about human being that I learned and are still pretty good after all these decades. So first, what do you manage? One project? Bunch of projects? Are they related? How? Do you manage an entire sector or division? Maybe software-oriented, it doesn't really matter in the end, but that wasn't absolutely obvious to me at the time. How do you interact with the outside? Do you talk to customers all the time? Do you have product managers? Yet another overloaded meaning of the word manager. Product manager doesn't necessarily manage anybody, but that plays the intermediate role towards customers and so on. What do the other divisions of the firm do? What do you do for them and so on? Or do you manage a whole firm, maybe software-centered, maybe not? What's the business model? Or do you manage people? In the end, that is, of course, the solution. What is in common across this huge variety of roles is that you coordinate and orchestrate the work of people. Now, a traditional image of management is something like that, which is the equivalent of a taxonomy. You know, everything is in one box. There are maybe not stated, but very real vertical barriers between what does marketing do, what does sales, what about production, support, and so on. This is the traditional scheme. Most firms can still be mapped this way, and it's really terrible because how does the support do their job unless they know the customers the way sales presumably know them, and the product the way presumably production knows them. So the traditional management, the very top-down, highly structured, okay, there's one favorable aspect. Authority and responsibility match. In theory, you're accountable for what you're handling, so your incentives are right. However, there's a negative, which is much worse. I believe the one who put it better is an author called Robert Anton Wilson. He's written many books and about the Bavarian Illuminati secret society. They're all fiction, but they map very well to the real world. Flow communication in that traditional top-down structure is really bad because the people who understand problems and opportunities and talk to customers and prospects and so on are at the low levels of the structure, and the people who make the decision are levels up. So the information needs to flow up, which is always a very slow process. Then the decision made needs to flow down again. The problems in the middle, there are what are correctly called middle managers. The work of a middle manager consists in carefully listening to the presentations of his reports, and they say no. That's it's a little summary, but that's how it works, and so that slows things down further. And this is especially true when the people actually doing the work are knowledge workers. That is, I'm sure it applies even if the main problem is putting bricks one on top of the other to make a wall, but I don't really have much experience in that. I'm experienced with people highly professional in their field, with needing very high flexibility and autonomy and accountability to actually do their best. And they don't really intrinsically respect somebody just because they have a vice president title or whatever. They want to work with professional peers. So if the only way to really get the reports to aligned with you is peer recognition, you'd better be a peer, or better. How do you gain the knowledge workers' trust and respect? Let's leave that for a second while we get into things that are common throughout time and space. When you manage a project, you're always managing risks and need to choose, at least in software, development tactics. I'm sure if this was about litigation lawyers, there would be completely different choices of litigation strategy and so on for the various knowledge field. Why do you have to manage risks? Because if you don't attack risks, they attack you. They destroy all your great work. The main risk can always be summarized in, am I building the right thing? Because if I'm building something that doesn't really match the need of customers, it doesn't matter if I build it perfectly, it still doesn't match. So I'm building the wrong thing. The secondary risk is I am aiming right, but I am using the wrong approach. I'm building the thing wrong. I like the symmetry, anti-symmetry of this thing. Most crucial bit, transparency. If you don't know about something, you can't manage it. So if there's any incentive for people to hide problems, you are really, really badly placed. And in addition to the risks that emerge in the work, you need to be able to anticipate some. If you are really good at anticipating risk and taking precautions before they emerge, there's a little problem. Will this advance your career? I mean, have you gained the hero title for fixing a horrible problem? No, you've done much better. You made so the problem didn't arise in the first place. So will the decision makers who could promote you or something realize that? I have my doubts. Point is, do you care? Do you care about your own personal career, or do you care about helping the customers or users of? The main lessons here is not something I had to articulate because it's perfectly explained online, and so I'm quoting. It's on a Google site called SRE. SRE stands for System Reliability Engineer, and it's really the job I would have liked to do at Google, but I wasn't good enough to do that. I had to do software which the SRE specified and would help them. So back to how do you manage risk? If you are in total chaos, a little structure helps. A great example is a study by Accenture and Stanford University, they picked at random a number of textile manufacturers in India, and to half of them, they offered a free management consulting, and to the other, they didn't. And then they measured, and the productivity of the ones who had management consulting was 2 or 3 times better than the ones who had just kept doing things. But that was starting from real cows, as in, do we have a ton of cotton wool to make? Oh, I don't know. I think we do. It's not in the ledger, but it's probably somebody forgot to enter it. Let's go look in the warehouse, that level of organization or lack thereof. So it's certainly true that rather than total chaos, a little structure is better. It doesn't necessarily follow that the more, the better forever. There can very easily be too much. There's a sweet spot that you hit. It depends on factors. So how predictable is it? What are you doing? A payroll system, well, presumably that's the millionth one written in this earth. The situation is very well known. You should be able to predict the risks and issues in advance. Or is it innovative? Then the better, the more innovative it is, the more surprises you're going to get, for good or, unfortunately, for ill. Are the requirements, the specifications, rigid? If you are guaranteed they are, they're lying to you. Everything is always changing, remember? And my favorite analogy here is modern fighter aircraft are deliberately designed to be aerodynamically unstable. Now, that seems like way, because that's the only way to be as maneuverable as a Mach 3 jet needs to be if it ever comes to an actual armed confrontation. So, to be that maneuverable, they're unstable, so they need a lot of monitoring, continuous adjustment, high pilot training, which means lots of software. And so that, are you designing a bicycle or a fighter plane? You'd better kind of have a sense of that. As for development tactics, I summarize the traditional waterfall in aim, 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 fire. The typical, more typical chaos is fire, fire, fire. Oops, sorry. The agile, I know the word has become a buzzword and as such is very negative, but it's kind of trying to mix the two, do a little, adjust, do a little, see what happens, adjust, and so on. The Agile Manifesto came out in 2001 and is very craftily wording. There is value in the first half of these, but the second, in the second half of this, but the first half is more important. Individuals and interactions over process and tools, well, you can read it. It's unfortunate that it's become a buzzword. So nowadays, if a consultant tells you, oh, you should use an agile, look around, is your wallet still in your pocket? Because one technique is pair programming, and it's extremely controversial because managers who don't get it want to know, okay, but who did this piece of software? Me and Joe. Yeah, but who's responsible for it? We are. It's just not what they want to hear. They want to have individual, but it doesn't work that way. It's a teamwork. And 2 people is a small team, but it's already a team. It's got so many advantages. My favorite is the bus number. If X people got hit by a bus, what would happen to the project? There's a lot of projects with a bus number of 1. If a certain individual should, let's forget about runaway buses, and although in Bologna it's kind of hard to forget right now, but just a flu, they're out of work for 2 weeks. Oops, does that freeze the project? That's a very, very bad thing. Also, it helps if the team harmonizes to a single style and collective ownership of the artifacts. It's amazingly good to help grow junior worker. Working side by side with the more experienced ones is much more useful than any lecturing after the fact. Also, it's a fact that two more eyes always improve thing. This has been extrapolated by Eric Raymond in what he called the Linus law. Given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. As in, if there's one of us looking, especially if we're the one who have written the software, it's really easy to miss a bug. If there's two of us, it's less easy. If you can get wisdom of the crowds at play, you're really much better placed. Another idea originally from Agile, well, one of the core of Agile, is test-driven development. I believe it was introduced, not with this name, in 1971 by one of the great authors of the psychology and sociology of programming, Weinberg. Prepare the tests in advance of testing, ideally in advance of coding. That's the sheer, remember he was talking about PL1, I think. It doesn't matter. The technical aspects, whether it's PL1, Fortran, COBOL, or Python 4.9, is minor compared to the core idea. If you write the test after you've written the code, especially if the same person, you're familiar with what the code does, and subconsciously you will write tests that check the code does exactly what it does, which isn't particularly useful. Okay, now back to management, managing people. There are things anybody can learn as from experience. Tacitus, the Latin author, put it very concisely: experientia docet stultus. Experience is fool's teacher. Actually, that's very optimistic because it assumes that even a fool can learn from their own experiences, and we know that's not the case. There are people who claim 20 years experience and have 1 year experience repeated 20 times with the same mistakes and outcomes. But I think the very smart people can in fact learn from others' experiences. And some things either you have or you don't. Do you care about the people? Do you care about the team's results? Can you deal with interrupts? You cannot avoid them. They care about people has been summarized by Maslow in his famous pyramid, you know, with the most low-level things at the bottom and higher up. They don't necessarily come in this ratio. The point is, given managing change is the core of it all, help others deal with change. Have their backs and yet push them to more. Trust them, but verify what they've done. The best example, but unfortunately I'm running very short on time, is Jack Welch, later the CEO of General Electric. Early in his career made a mistake that cost millions of dollars, and the next day he had his resignation letter ready for his manager, and the manager said, "You crazy, I just spent $5 million educating you. Why would I let you go like that?" Absolutely crucial, don't let people work too hard. One thing I did early on as a manager at Google is after coming home to dinner, I would get back to work just to eyeball around. If anybody was still working, I would shoo them. If they were playing football or something, that's fine. That's not the problem. Being at the office per se is nothing, but are they actually working, burning the midnight oil in the common sense? The best people tend, unfortunately, to be perfectionists. They shouldn't be. They should learn that good enough is good enough. I can't summarize, but this is the URL to all the one I like best of all of my talks. Good enough is good enough, because we tend to be perfectionists and we need to fight that hard. Okay. Now, given I have only 10 minutes left, I'm skipping the trust thing. Okay, this is another Weinberg masterpiece, becoming a technical leader. It doesn't only apply to technical. Again, all leading is leading. Change is crucial. Always be sincere whether you mean it or not is a great quote, but is actually a paraphrase from Truman, the American president, whose original was, always be sincere even if you don't mean it. That's kind of, it's satirical, but it does mean to get across. Okay, then there's time management. I'm not getting into that. And this is the issue of overwork. People think, well, if I can do so much in 2 hours, if I work 4 hours, I can do twice as much, maybe at those levels. But if you're working 60 hours, you're probably doing less than if you were only working 40. That's how it works. I'm talking on a continuing basis, not at 2 days emergencies. Those happen. But at one point, your productivity becomes negative because you're tired. You make so many mistakes, somebody will need to fix them. So you are destroying value instead of creating them. Back to team management. Team size. I've heard of teams of 20 or 30 people. That is a joke. If you are not on a very strong familiar basis with your reports, you're not really managing them. A team is too small, it has no space for specialists. That can be a problem in many fields. The sweet spot is half a dozen to a dozen people, which does allow 1 or 2 specialists as well as the rest of generalists. When it's so big, it gets hard to coordinate. Some people say, oh, but the team size can vary over time depending on the phase. This, as you can imagine, is a figure I stole from somewhere. The problem is if the team is changing all the time because this expert is being shifted from team to team, from project to project, it will never coalesce as a team. That's the big downside of this. Cohesion, focus, comradeship. How many people can you manage? It's not a problem just of the team size. It depends how much oversight they need, what other duties you have. I think 6 is a breeze. 12 is still okay, and 24 is stretching it really, really bad. Indirect reports count too. If you're managing managers, count about half. Or there's one exception I know from person, the best manager I've ever had, Bill Coran, was senior vice president at Google. He had more than 100 reports. He kept getting threatened by HR to split out. His reports were Ken Thompson, Rob Pike, me, these people who are like kind of don't need that much supervision, and yet do need, technically speaking, a manager for organizational reason. Some of the people will be hyper productive. The software is incredible, but I think knowledge work in general, the best can be 4 to 10 times as productive as a normal average. Some sources say up to 30. It depends a little on exactly the detail. How do you fit them into the team? Can they help others grow? Pair programming helps a lot. Or is the team just slowing them down? You really need to understand this in deep detail. And beware bean counters. They always try to, this guy is making twice as much as a new hire. If we fire them, we'll save a lot of money. If this person makes twice as much as a new hire, they'll probably produce 10 times as much. And it's a disaster for the firm to let them go. I don't really have many examples outside of software development, but I'm thinking Warren Buffett or David Lynch compared to other investors. How many hundreds of billions of dollars could he make more than a mediocre one? Finally, hands-on. It's one way to manage. It's the way I have found really works for me. And deploy yourself where it really matters. I'm sending you to, guess who? Weinberg again. And he says, when time and labor are running short, stop working on big things and put your hand on. And my only objection to this is, why wait until the running short time? Why not continuously devote a fraction of your time to hands-on? And Michael Lopp writes as Rams in Repose, that's the URL, apologizes for having early on recommended to have the team solve problems without being interrupted. And he gives an apology to all those he had advised this way. Wrong. Start programming again. If you've stopped programming, start again. You will see the timing by saying use Python or Ruby. Nowadays, Python flourishes and Ruby kind of stagnates, so nobody would really. And similarly, if you manage salespeople, do occasional selling. If you manage lawyers, be in court sometime. In some, change happens. And if you're detached, you don't feel it. Expect everything to change. Your career is not set in stone. If your project isn't changing, it means it's dead. We are still 1.0 beta, but we can marginally improve. The good enough is good enough, and the difference between perfect and perfect. Okay, that's, again, the URL for the handouts, and we're ready for Q&A.
Thank you, Alex, a lot. Very, very interesting, very inspiring. Okay, so we have a little bit of questions. We can go a little bit longer since there is a coffee break later.
And I'm around, so, and I even have a
yes, of course,
like to socialize.
The halls. Okay, so you talk about rigid hierarchies. Do you have any advice on how to break the walls between the people at the top and the bottom?
Yes, it comes actually from the area of supermarkets, of the convenience department stores. One of the reasons Walmart's destroyed their competition and absolutely dominate low-end retailing in the US, and they're the largest single private employer in the world, is they used to have, I don't know if it's still true, a policy that every manager, at least, I don't know, a couple days a month, dons typical clothing and goes to serve customers in a shop. As opposed to sitting in their ivory tower and directing the people who are in touch with customers, they need to be in touch with customers. That applies if your job is selling groceries. But there are analogies. As I said, the higher on you are, okay, your time is very precious. You will think, I can't waste 2 days selling bananas when I'm supervising $1 billion empire. It's not a waste. It's a great investment of time. Learn in person what are your people living every day. That is a very hard lesson for most managerial type, the harder, but it's, I think, the best strategy.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Have you ever struggled with the imposter syndrome?
Have I ever? Oh, yeah. I don't know anybody who hasn't. The impression is, oh my God, everybody working here is so bright. I'm the least. I'm not pulling my weight. It's something we've all felt. I have had the fortune of working with many geniuses in my time at IBM Research and at Google in particular, and I can tell you that what musician, a famous jazz musician had this recommendation to a young aspiring musician: always be the worst player in any band you're in. That doesn't seem intuitive, but it means look up. You may be the worst now, but you're going to learn. And this is how I got over imposter syndrome. I'm not as good as this guy, I'm not as brilliant as that guy, but I can learn from them. And if I am able to learn, and I'm not just kidding myself about that, that's how you surpass the imposter syndrome. One thing I've tried as a manager is to fight imposter syndrome in my reports by praise, effusive praise. It doesn't really work much because, of course, the guy who's convinced they're out of their depth think, yeah, he's saying that just to humor me. I'm still not pulling my weight. Just think of the assignment of job, like make this new guy work with newcomers, for example, so he can perceive that he's got more experience, more knowledge applicable to the field, and so on. Don't bother spending torrents of words saying, "Oh, you're great, you're wonderful," and so on. It slides off like water off a duck. That's my experience.
Okay, thank you. Next one. What was the most satisfying period in your career? Was the most difficult one? The most satisfying period in your career?
Okay, it was when Yahoo had just decided they couldn't afford to keep developing technology for search and ads, and they would delegate everything to Microsoft. Yahoo Japan, which was minority owned by Yahoo, was mostly SoftBank, tried it and said, nope, the guys don't have enough Japanese. We need the only technology that can replace our own is that of Google Japan. So we'd like to buy technological service from Google Japan. Problem, you will get lawsuit, antitrust lawsuit, of course. Microsoft would be silly not to try. So you need to think what is needed to convince a judge, or rather the technical experts this judge will consult, that it's strictly technical collaboration. There are absolute firewalls in the commercial side, so you cannot change your pricing because you know the pricing of the other and so on. For that, essentially, what you need is absolute auditability. Nowadays, I probably think this would be one of the few good uses for the technology that's mostly behind Bitcoin, what's the name? Right. But back at the time, although it existed, nobody knew, in particular I didn't know about it, so I had to hack together a system to make our exchanges with our Yahoo Japan counterparts absolutely solid, absolutely auditable, could not be altered. So on any challenge we could prove there had been no exchange of commercial information that would breach antitrust. We won the cause. We won the lawsuit. I wasn't even deposed. The code spoke for itself to a technical expert. That was kind of satisfactory because it did help me a little above to get above my syndrome, although of course, it was a huge effort, hundreds of people, but I was specifically in charge of the auditability part, and without it, we'd have been shot down by the courts. So I think I helped Google for not a huge amount by Google terms, but about $10 billion revenue that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And every little bit helps. That revenue, not profits, mind you, you need to subtract all the cost.
Okay. What do you think about peer programming with
Oh, sorry,
AI?
that was the most satisfactory.
Yes, there is also
I need to get
hardest.
the least satisfactory. So towards the end of my career in IBM, I had moved from research to supercomputing, and in particular to Bologna for a while. The IBM branch was in Borgo Panigale, where Ducati is, and the director in Milan, having to tackle me into a sales office, because that's what we had in Bologna, was terrified that my manager would abuse my status by deploying me on mundane problems. So he terrified my direct manager that he would be keeping an eye on it. So problem is, many days I had absolutely nothing to do. I wasn't allowed to go to the customers and help them out with everyday problems. God, how boring. That's when confirmed that facing difficulties is wonderful if you can overcome them, not so good if you can't, but it's always better to be struggling than relaxing and say, okay, what am I need to be here 2 more hours and I don't have anything to do. That when Usenet was not allowed, but there was an internal IBM set of newsletters, so I became one of the acknowledged gurus of the Turbo Pascal programming language. Just because I had nothing else to do, I answered technical questions. It's what I do pretty well, as you mentioned, Stack Overflow. And the Martelli bot thing on Usenet was also about me being reasonably good at answering technical questions. But it was still boring to death. That was all I was doing all day. Yeah, I don't mention boredom here, but if you're managing anybody and any of your reports is bored, that's your fault. Find a better framing for the work.
Okay, makes sense. We still have 5 minutes. Gianluca asks, what do you think about peer programming with AI? Still relevant as pairing with humans?
There's a presentation which I believe has been made public by my friend Peter Norvig, the director of research and AI guru, showing exactly that. Of course, it's from 2 or 3 years ago, so everything has changed on a technical level, but he showed how, based on the specification, the AI managed to make a working program, but it was something, I don't know, a raw beginner in Python might have put together. The need is if inputs arrive and then they need to be put out most recent first. What the thing did was it kept a list. Whenever a new thing arrived, it shifted all the list up 1 to insert the new item at 0. And when an item was required, it pulled it out and shifted the whole list. Result, n squared behavior, obviously, because it takes order of n time to move n bytes of data. Any decent programmer would understand that working at the end is much more effective, is order of n instead of order of n minus 1. And a few years ago, that was about the state of the art. I also have my favorite test for those conversational AIs, not programming, but if the thing can't answer a factual question, how can it program? And what I do is ask about summarize life and career of Francesco Guccini. Francesco Guccini is a Bolognese singer. Well, he's from Pavana, Modena, but he spent his life in Bologna. And a passion of mine, so I'm able to actually spot the issues. And more often than not, those AIs tell me Guccini is dead 10 years ago, which would be quite a surprise to him if you told him. And whenever I see that, okay, next. I can't afford to have this thing make something I cannot entirely check and trust. It's going to be a disaster. It will improve. How much? I don't know. I hope that the focus shifts heavily from using AI to replace humans, which is kind of a dead end and destined failure, to using it to augment humans. It's like, take a bicycle. As a empowering tool, it lets you go twice as fast with half the effort than if you were walking. But you cannot just have a bike and say, okay, so I don't need a person anymore because I have the bike. Somebody is there directing it, even if it has an engine, so you don't need to pedal. You still have a little eyes on the thing.
I think this could be the last one.
Yeah.
Is software still getting better or worse? Something like phone apps with online banking, 700 megabytes, and being dog slow and full of bugs seems very wrong.
Yeah, it's like any field abroad, the answer is yes and no, or it depends, which isn't very satisfactory. There are areas where software today can do amazing things that 20 years ago would have been inconceivable. And there are areas where maintenance has been skimped up because nobody likes to maintain old software. But if the old software is performing vital functions and the world is changing around it, somebody needs to adjust it. And in that, I fear we've got to, this is the kind of stuff that they want to deploy AI to save one programmer's salary. And I don't know if I have a solution how to make good programmer want to do maintenance. That probably was the problem even well before I entered the field as well, as definitely is today. In that, so new software can actually do amazing things, but there's a lot of existing software that can't just be dropped, and there we are having problems motivating people and firms to do all the maintenance they should be doing.
Okay, Alex, was a pleasure. Thank you very much.